New evidence shows Boris Johnson may well have repeatedly misled Parliament over Partygate. So say senior MPs. An interim report says the breaches of the rules would have been obvious to the former Prime Minister. Boris Johnson, though, disagrees.
The reason there's no evidence to show that I must have known, or I must have believed that illegal events were taking place is because I didn't.
The report claims Boris Johnson and his team were trying to disrupt its work by redacting or withholding evidence. We'll have the details also tonight. Good news for your energy bills. The government's expected to cap prices for another 3 months.
Have you lost friends?
Yes. Yes, I have.
Many?
Yes, many.
We fly with Ukraine's military pilots as President Zelensky tells us they urgently need more modern equipment. Reality TV star Stephen Bear is jailed over sharing an intimate video online without consent. And it's good to talk why these white phone boxes are more special than your average.
This is the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Good evening. There is evidence Boris Johnson misled Parliament over the Partygate scandal. That's what the Commons Privilege Committee said today. An interim report found the COVID breaches would have been obvious to the former Prime Minister when he told MPs he did nothing wrong. But tonight, Mr Johnson fought back, insisting there is no evidence he knew rules were being broken. And he questioned the role of civil servant Sue Gray, who led the damning internal inquiry into Partygate and who has now quit to join Labour. Here's our political reporter, Emmy Lewis.
Boris Johnson was raising a toast that would be the beginning of his downfall. Previously unseen photos of Downing Street gatherings show the then Prime Minister surrounded by bottles, apparently breaching lockdown rules. Time and time again, he's told the same story.
All guidance was followed. No COVID rules were broken.
A committee of MPs investigating whether he has misled Parliament has found evidence strongly suggests COVID rule breaking would have been obvious to Mr Johnson when he was at the parties. That he failed to tell the House what he knew about them, where the rules had been broken. He did not correct misleading statements to the House of Commons at the earliest opportunity and had personal knowledge of lockdown gatherings in number 10 Downing Street, which he could have told MPs. Today, Mr Johnson said there was no evidence he knowingly misled Parliament.
I believed implicitly that they were within the rules. I believed that what we were doing was within the rules. That's what I said. That's why I said what I said in the chamber. It was my honest belief at the time.
Also released today, WhatsApp messages sent between Downing Street staff. One read, "Can you pull together our best possible defence on this one? I don't know what we say about the flat." Another replied, "Don't we just do a generic line and not get into whether there was a drinks thing or not?"
I think the evidence of wrongdoing by Boris Johnson is already pretty damning. And I think, first and foremost, of the families, not just those that lost loved ones, but also all the other families who were obeying the rules, changing their lives.
Femi Akinola was a care worker during the pandemic. He died after contracting coronavirus. His son has watched Boris Johnson's interview. It made for uncomfortable viewing.
I buried my father and the next day there was a party in Parliament. And that's something I have to think about every time it comes up, that he says, I didn't break the rules. You did. It's clear that you did. There are pictures of you breaking the rules, so just tell the truth. And let's put this to bed once and for all.
Boris Johnson is due to give evidence to MPs later this month. They, like the families who lost loved ones during the pandemic, believe there are still unanswered questions. Johnson has said that he finds it, in his words, peculiar that the committee has used evidence from Sue Gray's investigation. The senior civil servant yesterday quit her job to take up a post as the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer's chief of staff. Well, last year Boris Johnson accepted the findings of her report, which found that there were breaches of the rules. However, today he has questioned her independence. But strip Sue Gray away from this and you still have the fact that there were 126 fines handed out following those Downing Street gatherings. And don't forget, of course, too, that Boris Johnson was fined by police for breaking lockdown rules.
Okay, Amy, thanks very much. The parents of a missing baby whose body was found near Brighton this week have appeared in court charged with manslaughter. Constance Martin and Mark Gordon were arrested on Monday. In court, it emerged the baby was a girl called Victoria. Ellie Pitt is outside Crawley Magistrates Court for us. Ellie, can you talk us through what happened today?
Constance Martin and Mark Gordon appeared at Crawley Magistrates Court this afternoon. They were both dressed in grey jogging bottoms and grey sweatshirts, and Mr Gordon kept a grey jumper on top of his head throughout the hearing as well. While the pair were in the dock, they reached out to each other to touch hands. They've been remanded in custody and charged with the manslaughter of a baby girl called Victoria, concealing the birth of a child and perverting the course of justice after the remains of an infant were found on Wednesday afternoon. Miss Martin and Mr Gordon spoke only to confirm their names, dates of birth and that they were of no fixed abode during the short hearing here. They'll next appear inside the Old Bailey on the 31st of March.
OK, Ellie, thanks very much. ITV News has learned that the government's expected to continue with its financial support to limit energy bills for another 3 months. The energy price guarantee sees the average annual bill capped at £2,500. Without it, average bills were set to rise to £3,000 from next month. Here's Ben Chapman.
Like so many, John can barely afford his energy bills now, let alone a rise next month. A disabled pensioner, he tries to avoid using expensive appliances. So he welcomes news today that government support is set to continue, but says it won't make life any easier.
The minute I switch on the cooker, I've seen the meter go all the way up like that. Most of the time now, I have to eat microwave meals because it's quicker, cheaper and less expensive on the electric.
At the moment, the government's energy price guarantee limits the typical household bill to £2,500 a year. There has also been a £400 winter discount, but it ends this month and the cap was also due to go up to £3,000 from April. It's now expected to remain at the current level.
Putting prices up when wholesale prices are dropping is unnecessary. It's bad for people's pockets, it's damaging for people's mental health, it's bad for consumer confidence, which means it's bad for business too, and it would unnecessarily increase inflation. So I'm very pleased that after these weeks of hard campaigning, it looks like the government is now listening.
The government have been under pressure to extend support because the price energy companies pay for gas and electricity has been falling, making the scheme less expensive for taxpayers. But the move isn't expected to be confirmed until the budget in a fortnight, to the frustration of suppliers.
While I appreciate that the Chancellor deserves a political moment for doing the right thing, the sooner they can let energy companies know for sure that this is happening, the better it will be for customers.
Campaigners say failing to extend the support could put more than 1 million more households into fuel poverty. For most, it seems likely energy bills will still go up next month, but not by as much as many had feared. Ben Chapman, ITV News.
Ambulance strikes set for England next week have been called off. Workers were due to walk out a couple of days next week. But Martin, it's not quite a simple situation, is it?
Yeah, it's quite complicated, Charlene, because there are various different unions involved. I think the headline is the biggest strike next week on Wednesday, which would have involved 32,000 Unison workers from ambulance staff to NHS staff, has been suspended. The ambulance strike on Monday next week will be less disruptive now because 13,000 GMB GMB staff are no longer going to go on strike, but Unite members still will be on strike. And that's the same story on Monday the 20th as well. Now, all this comes, the GMB unions say, after they said to the government that they would remove or limit the level of service they'll provide on strike days. They say that prompted the government to come up with what they call a huge shift in the fact that it's willing to discuss pay not only this year, but next year. They also say they've had assurances that any extra money would come from outside of the existing budget. Now, the Health Secretary had said he'll only open talks if strike action is suspended, which is why that's happened. As for junior doctors, though, that strike is still carded to take place for 72 hours from the 13th of March.
All right, Martin, thanks very much. An MP faces a 5-day suspension after using abusive language with racial overtones towards a journalist during one of 2 drunken confrontations in a Commons bar. Neil Coyle, who sits as an independent after being suspended by Labour, apologised for his behaviour after a report found he had breached harassment rules. Shocking footage of a man driving a huge car transporter with just his elbows has been released by police. It comes ahead of a campaign that will see officers patrolling the M1 motorway to crack down on dangerous driving. And the price of a first-class stamp is set to increase above £1 for the first time. Royal Mail's announced that. It will go up by 15 pence to £1.10 from April the 3rd, the day before the first stamps with the image of King Charles go on general sale. We're going to Ukraine now, where the country's president has told ITV News his forces urgently need more modern jets and helicopters. Forcing the Russians back requires air power, but Ukraine's equipment is old and outdated. Our correspondent Emma Murphy took to the skies with the helicopter attack units trying to liberate their land.
They are fighting for every bit of land. Fighting from above to target Russian positions and force the front line back. Ukraine's air assault on the forces below is relentless. And so across eastern Ukraine, sortie after sortie seeks out Russian positions. To hold the ground, you need to hold the skies. Such as the battle in the east, survival means fighting as close to that ground and as far from that sky as possible.
It's very dangerous on the east part of our country.
We were given access to the teams upon whom the air war rests. Without the defensive protection of more modern-day machines, the vulnerability is immense, and so they fly low and they fly fast. At times they're barely higher than the trees, but to go higher risks exposure to Russian attack. This past year has changed their ways. A learning curve under threat and constant pressure.
Such is the ferocity of the fight in the east that these pilots are flying more in 2 weeks than they have in their entire 6 years of training.
Battle and losses have honed their fighting style. No one will say how many crafts or people have been lost, but now they stay back and fire from afar.
If we have the long distance to
Much of Ukraine's air power comes from Soviet times. The menaces of old battles back to work once more. The pressure on the Commander-in-Chief to give those on the front line what they need to win their fight is evident.
In the second year of this war, what can you do to speed up the supply of weaponry? And do you believe that the West will have a long-term commitment to supporting this country?
We need artillery. That's number one. We need the artillery systems. We need the ammunition, a lot of ammunition in order to stop Russia. We need aircrafts. It's not about, discussions or promises, but it's about training of our pilots and providing us with aircrafts.
In conflicts of old, there was a belief that losing the war in the air meant losing the war in its entirety. Time has not changed that belief here. They fight for these skies, knowing the battle above is for the land below. Emma Murphy, ITV News, Western Ukraine.
Former Love Island star Georgia Harrison says she stands in solidarity with other victims after her ex-boyfriend Stephen Bear was jailed for sharing a private sex video of them online. Bear, who won Celebrity Big Brother in 2016, took the video without her knowledge and sold it. Today, a judge sentenced him to 21 months in prison and praised Georgia Harrison's courage, as Rebecca Barry reports.
Stephen Bear arrived at court with an incongruous arrogance.
Thank you so much.
Do you feel any remorse? You've been convicted. Do you want to apologise for what you've done?
You want a picture? And a selfie? Come then, come over.
But the former reality TV star didn't walk out of court with such bravado.
You should be innocent until proven guilty.
You have been proven guilty.
He was jailed
Hopefully today we get some justice.
for posting online a private video of him having sex with an ex-girlfriend. Georgia Harrison waived her right to anonymity. The judge said the former Love Island contestant had shown dignity and courage.
Today's sentence is a vindication of what I've been put through and sends a clear message that the police and the courts take this matter very seriously. I want to let all other victims of this crime know that I stand in solidarity with them.
Stephen Bear won Celebrity Big Brother in 2016, but it's his toxic behaviour for which he'll now be best known.
There's lying and there's bending the truth.
He posted a secretly filmed sex video of his partner onto his OnlyFans site without her consent. He even made thousands of pounds from it as viewers paid to watch. For that, he was sentenced to 21 months in prison. In court, his lawyers said he has ADHD and an impulsive nature, but the judge said that did not explain or excuse his behaviour, saying he'd caused extensive humiliation and embarrassment. As he left the dock to start his sentence, Stephen Bear waved and said, "Enjoy your weekend, everyone."
We really welcome this strong sentence, a custodial sentence of almost the maximum allowed. We hope will set precedent in these cases. It shows that the criminal justice system does take this kind of crime as the type of serious crime and offence that it really is, and that perpetrators will face punishment.
Thank you.
Prosecutors say even those in the public eye have a right to privacy, and they encourage other victims to come forward. Rebecca Barry, ITV News, Chelmsford Crown Court.
Former England and Yorkshire captain Michael Vaughan took the stand today in the high-profile hearing over the Yorkshire cricket racism scandal. He once again denied using a racist comments to refer to 4 Asian teammates during a match. Vaughan did, though, apologise for using unacceptable language in some historical social media posts. Here's our sports editor, Steve Scott.
Much has been discussed about what Michael Vaughan said to Azim Rafiq and 3 other Asian teammates in 2009. Today was his chance to give his version. Cross-examining Vaughan for the ECB, Jane Mulcahy said, "You agree the words 'there's too many of you lot' are racist or discriminatory?" "Absolutely," he replied. When he admitted he couldn't remember the form of words he actually used, Mulcahy said then he couldn't categorically deny using them. Vaughan responded, "Knowing me in 2009, that's not the sort of thing I would have said." A series of tweets made by Vaughan were then highlighted. In one, he wrote, "Not many English people live in London." He began another, "Why when you ring 118 118 are all the people who answer foreign?" He described them today as disgusting. Mulcahy challenged Vaughan. "The tweets reflect your values." Vaughan replied, They're historical tweets. I don't think it's fair to suggest that they represent my values. Mulcahy went on. The tweets are similar in tone to, "There's too many of you lot. Do you accept that?" "No," he said.
When asked why he went to meet Azim Rafiq, Vaughan told the hearing he thought the whole situation was escalating out of control. It was getting too big and hurting too many people.
Earlier, Vaughan's barrister questioned the credibility of the investigation, specifically who was interviewed about what Vaughan was alleged to have said. "You didn't speak to the umpires," he asked the ECB's Mina Botros. "No," he replied. "You didn't speak to the Sky cameraman?" "No." "You didn't speak to Michael Vaughan?" "No, we wrote to him." "You weren't really interested in looking into the matter, apart from finding corroborating evidence, were you, Mr. Botros?" "No, that's not correct." The panel also heard from Azim Rafiq's union rep, who said that Rafiq told him he'd use the race card for personal gain. One allegation involved being accepted on a coaching course after the deadline had passed. Rafiq described this as a really odd thing to claim. Like all the accused, Vaughan won't know until later this month whether the charge against him has been upheld or not. Whichever way it goes, though, for him and the others, no one will have anything to celebrate. Steve Scott, ITV News.
And finally tonight, when it comes to phone boxes, why Hull really has the cream of the crop. The city has 9 of the country's rarest, and they've just been given listed status. Unusually, they are coloured cream rather than red because they were operated by the local council. But not all the locals are impressed, as Chloe Keedy reports.
What's wrong? Major! Louis, Major, tell me what's happening. Louis. Major! Will you mind your own business, please?
They've given us some of British cinema's greatest comedy moments, from the 1955 film The Lady Killers to the cult classic Withnail and I.
Well, it's not my fault if the system doesn't work. Hang up on me.
The famous British phone box has played many starring roles, although, as Harry Potter demonstrates here, they don't often get used for making calls anymore. In Hull, they might be looking a little less glamorous, but they are icons nonetheless. In fact, 9 of these rare cream-coloured phone boxes have just been awarded heritage status. Despite appearances, these ones are still in active use, although apparently not always for what they should be.
The stuff that happens in those phone boxes there, you won't want that on camera.
They're collector's items. I'd love one for my garden myself.
My children have not used them before, so if they start using them, it's okay. It's like keeping history going.
There were 11,000 K8 kiosks installed across Britain in the 60s and 70s. Most were later removed by British Telecom, but in Hull, the phones were run by the local council and the cream-coloured boxes survived.
It's partly a combination of the rarity, but also the fact that they're part of this independent telephone network. They've never been part of BT. It's always been independently run. I think Hull likes to be independent.
It is, after all, home to 9 old phone boxes that now look set to outlive most of our mobile phones. Chloe Keedy, ITV News.
What a lovely bit of history. OK, that's it from us for now. The weather's next, and Raggy will have your news at 10. But for me and the whole of the news team here, goodbye and have a great weekend.
Visibility may be low this evening as the cold weather hits. Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.
A very good evening to you. Like the last few days, staying chilly into the weekend, a little let up really, with cloudy skies by day, patchy frost by night, and then even colder into a new week. I think you've got the idea by now. Temperatures will be way lower than we've seen throughout February. A taste of winter once more through the first full week of March. And already we've got snow and ice warnings in place for parts of northeastern Scotland and northeastern England through Monday and Tuesday. In the meantime, high pressure in control, keeping it generally quiet and calm through the weekend, but a few scattered showers into the east. and the chilly theme enhanced by cloud cover and a biting breeze from the near North Sea. And then the first signs that northerly airflow becoming established into the end of the weekend and the start of the new week. Colder Arctic air working its way from north to south, freezing, frozen ground, ice, as well as rain, sleet and snow forecast into a new week. In the meantime, we've got cloud cover capping temperatures across eastern and central southern spots tonight. Further north, further west, clearer, colder, freezing and frosty here, as low as -2, -3 in sheltered glens of Scotland. But here, the best chance of clear, crisp conditions into the first stages of Saturday morning. Otherwise, a lot of cloud from the word go. That cloud becoming extensive as we head through the course of the day. Just slithers of sunshine, particularly across those western spots as we head through the day. And a few scattered showers into the north and the east on that brisk, biting breeze. Temperatures likely to struggle, just 8 or 9 degrees in many locations, and feeling even chillier with the cloud and that icy breeze.
Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.